G'day folks and welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chaser Cyclone video update for the nation today, the 5th of January 2015. My name's Chris Nitzo and this update, as all of our updates are, sponsored by Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. Looking at your latest satellite image from the Bureau of Meteorology, we can see the tropical low located here in the North Kimberley is creating, and the associated monsoon, is creating a lot of cloud and rain activity and storm activity across the northwestern parts of Australia into the Timor Sea and the Southeast Indian Ocean. If we track further to the east, you can see a little bit of activity across the Northern Territory outside of the northwest coast, here on the north and northeast coastlines, but the activity is fairly isolated there. Further to the east in the Gulf of Carpentaria, we can see particularly the eastern half of the Gulf of Carpentaria is starting to become active. This is where we're going to see a new low develop over the next few days, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one and where it's expected to go shortly. And then over the North Peninsula, we're seeing some very good shower and storm activity. Across Queensland, we can see an upper level trough creating patchy rain, general extensive cloud activity all across the state. But the patchy rain tends to be located more in the central, western and southern inland parts of Queensland. Also along the coast, you can see this light colouring here showing continual coastal shower activity coming along an moist easterly stream. The Queensland Bureau of Meteorology is showing us here on the latest 3-day outlook. There are no significant lows in the region, unexpected to develop in the 3 days. A weak monsoon trough lies to the north of the Coral Sea. It is expected to develop and drift south into the northern Coral Sea over the next few days. So we are expecting activity along that monsoon trough, and we'll talk a little bit more about a low that could be located in the northern Coral Sea shortly. Before we do that though, I'd like to draw your attention to a weak low located just here to the southwest of the Solomon Islands, or just to the west of the Solomon Islands, and it is expected to slowly deepen but also push away from the Queensland coast. So even though the system could actually intensify a little, it's not expected to do so on its way anywhere near Queensland. So you can see here in 3 days time, Wednesday night, we've got the system located to the south of the Solomons, and still just generally a tropical low. If we fast forward that through to the 120-hour mark on the computer model to the Friday night, we'll see the system has tracked sufficiently southeast here to be located very, very close to the edge of the Australian area of responsibility, and you can see here it's tracking southeast right out there towards New Caledonia, and should never pose a threat to Queensland whatsoever. The reason it should never pose a threat to Queensland is, if we look at the upper level charts, we have a hell of a trough system in the upper levels crossing the Coral Sea at the moment, and it will continue to do so over the next few days and will result in upper level winds pushing the system away to the southeast. So that's enough on that. More interesting if you live in Queensland is the development of a trough system across the Gulf of Carpentaria, associated possibly even the monsoon trough, you could call it. And what we'll see along this trough line is a tropical low develop over the next 5 or 6 days. And if we look now towards Thursday night, we will see a recognised circulation here at the surface on Thursday night in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And voila, there it is. It's a very, very weak system. It's more of a very strong trough at that point in time on the Euro. However, we can see that the trough extent extends a long way eastwards, and so we've got a trough located right up through here and into the northern Coral Sea even. So we've got a situation here where a tropical low could form along that trough line, anywhere along the trough line. And so therefore, we have a fair bit of model discrepancy and disagreement as to where it actually forms. And so if we take a look at the GFS forecast model, it has the system located out here on the northeastern tip of that trough system, and also significantly stronger, in fact fairly close to tropical cyclone intensity. If we continue to track this system along through the time frame and head out to Friday night, we will see that the system tracks in a southeasterly direction, and on the GFS model at least continues to intensify. Now, I'm not going to push this past this time frame because there's too much disagreement, and I don't want to show you this hitting land and then panicking everyone. So suffice to say that we're going to see a trough system across the Gulf of Carpentaria. Along that trough system, we're expecting to see a low develop. Now, whether it develops in the central Gulf or the far northwestern Coral Sea, not quite sure at the moment, and the models do disagree. But at this point in time, it's certainly something to watch, because should it form in the northeast Coral Sea, or the northwest Coral Sea, the steering mechanisms in play in the far northwestern Coral Sea are different to the steering mechanisms in play in the far northeastern Coral Sea. So what we have in the northeastern Coral Sea is a situation where an upper level trough is amplifying and trying to push the system away here to the southeast. But in the the northwestern Coral Sea, we actually have a mid-level or upper level high located here over northern Queensland, which will try and push the system in a west to southwest direction onto the coastline. So the important thing is to be aware that the steering mechanisms in play here would be different for the two different systems. So should a system form here in the northwestern Coral Sea, it's more than likely going to drift in a south to south-southwest direction, as opposed to a system that develops here near the Solomon Islands, which is almost undoubtedly expected to move southeast away from the continent. On to the big one we've been watching, and this is the one over WA. Now, initially we were almost expecting it to be a non-issue. It would push off the coast, become a cyclone. Now it has become an issue because it is more than likely, more than 50% chance of it not doing so, as opposed to before, where it was almost a 70 or 80% chance of it becoming a cyclone. Now we're expecting, or the models are expecting, I should say, not the models are expecting this system to remain inland or just along the coastline and drift ever so slightly towards the southwest before finally an upper level trough amplifies and takes the system away to the southeast, creating a massive, and I do mean massive, amount of rainfall across the interior parts of WA, possibly into South Australia. It's going to be an absolute schmozzle in terms of the rainfall amounts from this particular thing. It's certainly going to create widespread flooding and flash flooding at that. But you can see here Thursday night the system located just inland of, or to the southeast of Broome, and creating a fairly strong monsoonal push to its north. So if you live north of the actual system centre, you probably could be mistaken for thinking it is a tropical cyclone, because you're going to be experiencing fairly similar type of wind gusts. You're going to be experiencing similar type of torrential rain that you would in a cyclone itself. So if we then track the system through to the 120-hour mark, which is the Saturday night, and we actually see the system is gone. It's actually no longer with us. It's not a recognised surface circulation now. What has happened in this particular situation is that we now just have a trough line where the tropical low used to be. That is probably the low itself, so you can see how fast it's progressed or translated out here to the southeast, and in its wake is left a very strong trough system, a very strong monsoon trough, so you're still going to see gale force winds across the North Kimberley. You're still going to see torrential rainfall across this entire part of the state and into South Australia as well. Almost identical scenario in play here from the GFS computer model, same sort of thing. The system lies right over the top of Derby tonight. Tomorrow morning, and then as we head into Wednesday morning, it doesn't do too much more than that. It sort of drifts around the place, doesn't intensify too much because it remains fairly coastal. And then as we head to Thursday morning, we see the system drift ever so slightly back onto the coast, maybe slightly off the coast, and you've got a fairly strong monsoonal flow here to the north, 30 to 35 knots being the standard, coming across into the region. On Thursday night, we continue to see an aggressive monsoonal surge being predicted here by the GFS model, but once again we continue to see the system lying right on the coast. Now, it is important to note that if the system pushes another couple of 100k offshore, we're going to see a cyclone, almost undoubtedly. But if the system remains in play around the coast, within 50 k's of the coast, either on or off, it's unlikely to become ATC. But once again, the actual experiences felt, or the weather experiences felt, will be very, very similar to that of a Category 1 tropical cyclone. I guess the big disappointment in this system isn't the fact that it probably won't be that strong, is the fact that it's probably not going to dump any rainfall on the West Pilbara or Gascoyne. All the rainfall from it will be particularly to its north and east of the forecast track, and also right on the forecast track, maybe some moderate falls to the south of the track as well. But anywhere further south than that and outside of the actual circulation of the system, you're going to get dry southeasterly winds coming through, similar to your dry season type scenario. Rainfalls across the northern half of the nation, we can see fairly heavy rainfalls across the central parts of the Northern Territory, northwestern top end coastline experiencing a lot of rain. The Western Peninsula is starting to see elements of that monsoon coming through, even though it's not a true monsoon there yet, but we are seeing elements of it pushing through in the westerly flow. Across the coast of Queensland, we're going to see showers, possibly moderate falls on the Gold Coast particularly, but showers just generally along the coast of Queensland on an easterly flow. Not much of that moisture making it into the inland parts of WA just yet. However, the Gascoyne region just inland of the coast could experience some thunderstorms today. As we head to Tuesday, we're going to see the Gascoyne coastline will see, or the Gascoyne hinterland region will see an easing or complete weakening of the moisture that created those storms. Over the north, though, we will continue to see heavy rainfall associated with the tropical low over the Kimberley. Also some heavy rainfall over the southwestern top end. Some continuation of shower and storm activity across the West Peninsula and also in the central parts of the Northern Territory. As we head to Wednesday, we'll probably see rainfalls actually increase along the North Kimberley coast, and rainfalls begin extending further inland and further south on the Wednesday as well. Along with this, the central parts of the Northern Territory just experiencing phenomenal rainfall there and continuation of phenomenal rainfall, and same sort of thing, the North Peninsula now getting in on the act as well as that monsoon trough drifts southwards. Some isolated showers continuing along the Queensland coast, possibly becoming a little bit more frequent here on the North Tropical Coast on Wednesday. Oh, and that's something I didn't mention on Tuesday too, the increase of shower activity along the North Tropical Coast. On Thursday, showers start to ease along the Queensland coast, becoming very isolated. Even on the tropical coast, they start to ease. Big increase in rainfall here over the North Peninsula. Now, that is due to, as I mentioned, that trough system possibly creating a low pressure system somewhere near the peninsula coastline. And across the northwestern parts of the continent, we're continuing to see heavy rainfall associated with the monsoon and tropical low. On the Friday, we'll see that tropical low start to push southeast, and you can see some of the amazing rainfall totals here across Alice Springs and further south into South Australia. We could be seeing falls of over 100 millimetres in 24 hours, which is quite phenomenal for that region. Continuation of monsoonal showers and storms across the northwest coastline all the way through into the Northern Territory, and a continuation here of very heavy rainfall across the North Peninsula. Now, once again, we're not sure whether that low will form in the Gulf or whether that low will form off the far North Peninsula coastline in the Coral Sea. And obviously for the Queensland coast, if it forms in the far northern Coral Sea, you will need to watch this in the extended time frame, because as I mentioned, the steering winds in the far northwestern Coral Sea will track a system that develops here, either south or southwest back onto the coast. So certainly something to watch in the longer term if you live in Queensland. Alright folks, thanks for watching this update, and we'll have another one up for you on Wednesday.